Hello everyone, Mark Heck coming to you from the west coast of beautiful British Columbia. Today I'm asking the question, what is Canada's most important city? Now I can tell you right off the bat, it is not Vancouver, it's not Toronto, it's not Montreal, it's not Calgary or Edmonton or Ottawa or Halifax, York Factory, or even Wawa. The most important city in Canada is Winnipeg. Now why Winnipeg, you ask? Well, we have to zoom out and look at the big picture of North America to see why. From the 30,000-foot view, the big thing to recognize is that North America became incredibly wealthy since European arrival due to one really important thing: natural capital. The vast resources of timber, minerals, water, rangeland, grains, cattle, etc., is what made North America so rich. But to exploit those resources required superb transportation. Now, the most efficient form of transportation is by water. The second most efficient form of transportation is rail. If you have fabulous waterborne transportation combined with great rail systems, you have a winning competitive advantage. Roads and trucks, by the way, are basically the worst, most inefficient form of transportation, and air is very niche specific. So it's water and rail that really count. So if we look at the North American continent, the coastal ports were always going to be important, and they are. But to truly exploit the continent for its natural resources, one would have to access the continental interior as cheaply as possible, which meant water and rail were always going to determine where the most important cities were built. So in this regard, North America kind of had two Hail Marys when it came to shipping. Actually, three. The first is that it has the Hudson's Bay, which was traditionally used to access the interior of the continent from the north. Second, it has the Great Lakes, which extend deep into the continent from the east and allow ships to sail all the way to the 92nd meridian at kind of Duluth, Minnesota, which is only 380 miles short of being the geographic middle line of the continent at the 100th meridian. And if that wasn't phenomenal enough, there's the navigable Mississippi River, which gives ships access from the south and allows them to penetrate deep into the interior of the continent as well. No other continent has such natural advantage in terms of navigable waterways, although some continents are definitely better than others. Europe has been quite blessed with navigable waterways. The European countries that have gained the most wealth historically have almost always been correlated to those with networks of inland waterways. Africa, in comparison, should theoretically be rich because it has an abundance of natural resources kind of south of the Sahara Desert. But Africa doesn't have good coastlines to build great ports. It doesn't have inland waterways to access deep into the interior of the continent. And it also doesn't have a third really important thing: a cohesive political entity that can manage trade and infrastructure in a uniform manner. Now, North America outcompetes Africa by a long shot and Europe by quite a bit in every regard, transportation-wise. It has the unbelievable advantage of having great coastal ports, deep natural inland waterways, and mostly flattish land to build railways. It also has just two main political jurisdictions, Canada and the United States, which agree on just about everything transportation related, if not other things. So you put this all together and then you ask, well, what is the most important city? And the answer is always going to be a convergence point in the transportation networks that access the interior of the continent. Now, a good way of assessing where that is, other than looking at where the natural waterways are, is to look at where the railroads were built, and then look at where the railroads converge. That's where you find the most important city or cities. So if we look at this map of railroads across North America, we can see a major convergence point in the United States: Chicago. Chicago is both a major inland port on one of the Great Lakes and the most important rail hub, kind of all in one package. So Chicago was and still is arguably the most important city in the United States. The most definitive book on this subject, which explains Chicago's rise to prominence, is called Nature's Metropolis by Walter Cronin. And it was published almost 35 years ago, and I definitely recommend taking a look at it. Okay, so that's America, but Canada's equivalent to Chicago is also a city at a convergence point, and we can see it on the same map right there. That's Winnipeg. Without Winnipeg, the resources of North America's northern half could never be fully exploited and converted into wealth. Winnipeg is the transportation hub that made Canada rich. While Vancouver and Montreal and Toronto are all bigger in terms of population, geographic location made Winnipeg far more important for Canada's success than any other city across the country. But in the future, that may not be the case. Winnipeg's geographic location will always exist, but if Canada and or the United States break up into many countries, we could end up with a major problem: the breakdown in the current continental political cohesion that we have at the moment. And if that happens, it doesn't matter how great the geography is. If you have political disunity, those resources are going to have a really hard time going anywhere. Just ask Africa how that's worked out. But in the meantime, the most important city in Canada still remains Winnipeg.